Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages and non-binary, this is the BearatNight podcast, and I'm your host, Dominic, that guy up the street, the Jurassic Parker, all that and above, the guy with the big red ranger behind him. I have here one of the... I'm trying not to fanboy. This is one of the moments I'm trying not to fanboy. But I can't. I will tell you right now, I can't hold no promises. I can't hold promises, but this man is behind one of my favorite shows. You already know Power Rangers, but one of my top 2 seasons is honestly, other than Mighty Morphin, that's like Michael Jackson. Everybody likes that.
It's untouchable.
Yeah, it's just this. So much so Hasbro and everybody cannot stop making money off of it to this day. But my favorite seasons is Power Rangers in Space and Power Rangers S.P.D. And those are my top 2 because I love futuristic things. And
yeah, I see a theme there.
There's a theme. Sci-fi is my thing. And I can't, Greg Aronowitz, man, sir, thank you. That's what I want to say first off. Thank you for your hard work and everything that you've done so far, but especially with SPD. Thank you. I want to get that right out there. Give you your flowers right away. Because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have SPD. And man, it's so much we could go for about SPD. And it's the 20-year anniversary. And we're in 2025.
Yeah. That's the amazing part. I mean, the 20th anniversary was inevitable, but the fact that the 20th anniversary is, the year the show takes place just makes it super special.
It really is, and I'm mad that it's not like that in the year 2025. It's so funny how I always say now I feel like I'm older now. I'm older now, so the word back in the day actually happens now. When you get older, you actually use the term now. But back in the day, and you watch stuff from like in the 90s and everything, the future seems so far away when they say that deep in the future of 1997.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah. Blade Runner, Back to the Future, all that stuff. It's like we're beyond all of that now.
Yeah, so. And then you get kind of sad. It's like it's not like that at all when we get to that point. It's like, okay, when we're gonna get there? And I thought by 2025 we might get little things. But I was
we're closer. So I don't know, if you ever heard this story, but it was one of the earlier disagreements between Bruce Kalish and I. He wanted the show to take place in 2020. And I wanted it to be 2025. And I, my argument was like 2020 sounds like a news show or like an eye exam. It doesn't sound like the future, it does like right. 2020, like 2025 just seemed like the distant future in 2005. And I think, he wrote the first episode, but because I directed, I was the supervising executive in the editing room. So when we were editing it and they were putting up the titles, I was just like, just put 2025. It makes more sense. And but to me, it's even funnier now because, first of all, 2020 will go down in history as like the worst. Yes. We're all like locked in our houses and stuff. But also, in the past 5 years, like you said, we're not there yet. But we've come so much closer than we were in 2020. Like we have robot dogs. Yes. We have, this arsenal of drones. We have, I made a joke on Instagram, like we don't have alien invasion yet, but who knows what those drones are in Jersey? Maybe that's Grum coming to check us out.
That's true. That's true.
Just the communication devices, and I saw they have a laser, like a handheld laser now, like for real, like not. So just the advances in the past 5 years have made it closer to, SPD, but.
Yeah, I you know what, as I think somebody said before, I can't remember who it was or a comedian, I don't think they said it. I want to get to the future, but I don't think we should get to the flying cars because no one knows how to drive already on the ground.
On the ground, yeah. But
Let alone,
again, we don't, they're not licensable. But there are actually flying cars now. Have you
yeah.
seen like the speeder bikes and stuff? And um, so it's only a matter of years before, yeah,
Okay.
every rich guy is crashing into some building.
I can see it. I can see it happening, and it's funny because the number 5 is my favorite number. So when I see like 2025, like, ooh, it's definitely gonna be good. And there was a show I think at the time I saw as well called Cleopatra 2525 at the time too.
Right.
And I used to love that show too. And it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, it just has more of a ring to it. My
Yeah,
other argument was, at the end of the day, we always have to remember we all love Power Rangers. Everyone who's watching this is, an adult that
yeah,
loves Power Rangers, which is totally fine. But the target when you're making the show is kids. And so it felt to me like when you were 10, 20 years in the future is like, oh
hmm
my God, that's forever. Where, because I noticed on Instagram lately, I've been posting about S.P.D. and people are like, yeah, it's weird. Like, you guys should have made it like 2525 or 3000. And it's like, but then it becomes so far away that I think
right.
when you're a kid, it's like, it doesn't make sense. Like when I was a kid, Blade Runner was,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, 30
right.
years in the future, and it was like, whoa, like, will I even be alive? And now it's weird that it's coming
Yeah,
on, and it's like, you know,
but you know what?
um,
I guess it gives for that amount of time. It gives room for fan fiction.
yeah,
If someone wants to add on to the SPD mythos, just like, oh, there's legacy characters you can add to that for future stuff, maybe. As a matter of fact,
yeah,
the what is it? The Omega Ranger came from the future, so it's like you got stories from there too if you want to do something like
yeah, yeah,
so it could happen. Boom Studios, if they wanted to ever do something like that, they could do it.
yeah, because his future was ahead of,
Yeah.
so yeah, so we still have that whole thing to get to.
Oh my god. You know what? And speaking of being a kid, and I have my morpher here still. I still have my morpher, my doggy Kruger. The watching the show as a kid, and not being a black kid back, at the time, at a crucial point, is being able to see and watch Power Rangers and stuff at the time, and not a lot of kids at the time when I was watching it was watching it. Only about like the kids in my my karate group, but to watch it and to see a reflection of myself as the Red Ranger with Jack,
Mm-hmm.
really, like, when they say representation matters, it really does in a lot of ways. And to see Jack's character, who didn't really have much, but kind of had the like arrogance type of thing going because he
Mm-hmm.
from his background, but also rose to the occasion of being a leader and the whole thing. It really spoke a lot, especially someone like myself, especially that you're growing up and you could get into any type of stuff. And to see a character like Jack is like, you know what, Jack did that. You know what, maybe I should not go over here. I'm thinking about of Jack. If I had options to do certain things, let me not do something because Jack wouldn't do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a leadership material. No, let me not do this. Let me go do what my grandmother told me. Because that's what Jack would have done.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave back to his community as well too. Even after he gave away his powers and did more for his community. And I I don't know who idea was at the time, but to do that, especially when you only have one other Red Ranger that was black, and that was cool. I love TJ's character, but he was second to Tommy. He was
Mm-hmm.
he got the baton after, but to have a Ranger that was like that was from the from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It was great, and you had to see his not only his growth, but all the Rangers' growth.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, well, because that was the thing. He didn't get handed down the baton. He took it from the top and over everybody else.
right,
And then, so then we had to see Sky learn to deal with that.
right,
And to be honest, that was not a that was not like a thing where we were like, oh, let's make the Red Ranger black. Like, we had the characters,
Mm-hmm.
Created, and we auditioned, and we started picking the people we liked, and they auditioned for, I'm sure Brandon, I don't remember specifically, but I'm sure he auditioned for Sky. I'm sure he
Right.
had auditioned for Bridge, but obviously, Brandon's too cool to, like, in real life, he's the coolest guy that I've ever met. So it's like he, just his natural, characteristics just made him the Red Ranger. Like, it didn't matter, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's funny because if you ask a lot of black kids now, like, especially from who watch Power Rangers, that's probably my age range, or whatever. Uh, Even just his hair was an inspiration. Like, oh, I could do that with my hair. I could do that. Oh, like, if I grow my hair out or whatever, like, one of the reasons why I even started, like, I kept my locks before, but when the time at the inspirations at the time, like, oh, when I wanted to get my locks done, it was like, oh, Jack had dreadlocks. He had locks. Okay, I
yeah.
want to do that too, and then I did. Eventually I did it, but it was just like, it's like my little one step close to being a Power Ranger type of thing. Jack had Jack had that. I would get him too. The other question, the other thing I wanted, the one of the things I always love to get the answer for was buttery. How did that come to part?
So
Because no matter what, I can't do the buttery without doing the fingers.
yeah, you have to do
I
it.
gotta do the
You have to
fingers.
do it. And I love that. But no, honestly, so what happened was, um, we had the characters in mind, and then we ended up picking the actors that fit closest to the character. But
Mm-hmm.
but very quickly, during the rehearsals and the read throughs, um, we would end up doing rewrites and stuff, and the actors' personalities started bringing more to the characters.
Right.
And the buttery thing was a joke that was not written in the script. It was something that just happened at a dinner, and
Mm.
uh, Matt just and Bruce just thought it was so funny, and he wrote it in the script. And honestly, it was not like we were like, oh my god, that's gonna be a thing. It was
Yeah.
just like this, but everybody loved it. So then we ended up, dude, like that was one of his. There were certain things that were in the script, some things that even came from Dekaranger, like
Mm-hmm.
Bridge doing a handstand to think, so that the
Yeah.
thoughts go down into your brain. Those things were like kind of forced. But this was just. Because Matt's just very animated when he
Right.
talks, and I forget exactly what we were doing, but we were just eating and talking about something. He's like, "Oh, it's buttery," and then it was like, boom. And as the season went on, there were more little, things like that, and just choices that the actor makes. Chris with the skybrow, I can't do
Right.
it, but when he,
Uh, yeah. I call it the people's eyebrow.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
doing the
it's
people's
definitely
eyebrow.
he was influenced by the but he has kind of his own version that's like
Yeah.
so perfect for that character. It's so like I don't use the word condescending, but it's like when Bridge is on a tyrant or uh when one of the characters is doing something like off the book that is not, how Sky just
Right.
throws that look, and it's like, get back in line, so but that was him. Like, he brought that, and then we started writing it in,
The
so
countless amount of bread I've ate, like, so much after that show, and every time I do, I always take buttery. I
yep.
always and like I would do the same thing he did, if I just get like 6 pieces of bread and toast them up and just like and sit there on the couch watching TV, whatever, and it's just buttery, just like having my
The
moment.
simple pleasures, though, you don't realize how good
Simple.
it is. You're like,
Ah,
damn, toast is really good. But the amazing thing about buttery, it's like trying to bring fetch back. It's like it works for
mhm.
everything. You can like
Yes.
your friend gets a new car, you're like, ooh, buttery. It's like,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
yeah, that was just luck, and because we worked with super talented people, and people said random things, and then we'd catch it and put it in the show. But I think that's what made it. I feel like with a lot of shows, especially kids shows, and I never want to talk
Hmm.
bad about other seasons of Power Rangers, but you know, a lot of stuff seems like a little forced.
Right, right.
And SPD, I feel, of course, I'm looking through it with rose-colored glasses, but just has a little more of a flow to it. The team
Yes.
is a little more, unified, and
It definitely was something. It wasn't the normal. That's why I love the season because I feel like it grew with the audience. If you was there from day one and you kept watching it, it kind of like you growing up with the show, and the show was growing up. So it's like, all right, we're taking them from just being teenagers. They're young adults. These people have jobs now. You know, they're they have a profession. Like, we got to see, like I love Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, because these are people with jobs, like
hmm
careers,
hmm
real careers. And now we have police officers. They're you know in space. They're like futuristic police officers, but they're police. You know,
yeah.
and they're it's kind of showing you, yeah, they go. This is the process. It's like if you, and I'm pretty sure, just like Lightspeed Rescue, you have some people that watch SPD and became police officers after that. Because
hmm
it kind of gave you. Because also it gave me that police academy feel as well. So
Right,
their
right.
points. And if you guys don't know what police academy is, please go do your watch it. Just watch it. It's a great time. It's it kind of gave you that because you got to see them train, and you don't get that. You didn't get to see that behind the scenes type of thing of becoming a ranger at the
Right.
time. So
Yeah,
you
which
got
was
to
my
see it.
main thing. When I was offered the job, um, I was super excited. I would have taken it no matter what. But I was like, listen, if you want me to be involved, and
Hmm.
and Bruce was coming on board, and he was just like, he liked my comic books and stuff, and he's like, you're kind of like a world builder. So if you could do anything, like, what would you do? And I was like, what I don't want to do is, again, as much as everyone loves Power Rangers, like, it makes me crazy when the seasons are about, a group of high school kids, and then they like fall into a hole, or some alien comes down and says, here's your powers. And like 2 scenes later, they're the most
Yeah,
powerful beings in the universe, and
yeah.
they're just fighting everyone. And then the whole arc is like just trying to win. And I'm like, that's not life. I'm like,
Hmm.
as entertaining as the show is, I still feel it's our obligation as the storytellers to give the young kids an
Mm.
arc to grow and to understand. It's like, if your goal in life is to be a Power Ranger, you're not dreaming that someone's just going to zap you with the power.
Right.
You need to earn it. You need to
Hmm.
train for it. You need to understand the responsibility. And that's what I want. So where Deca was, they were already an existing police force, and they didn't have powers. They just were the Power
No.
Rangers. I was like, well, let's, you're kind of stuck with the overall theme because all the props, everything is like based around space police.
Right.
But I was like, but let's make it the academy, and let's have them be training. And then the biggest fight I had to fight, the biggest battle I had to fight, was that they were not the Power Rangers.
Right.
They were B Squad.
That's the
Because
best.
I was
Yeah.
like, again, you cannot be like, for 22 minutes, like, we're learning how to be, and now for 37 more episodes we are. I'm like, let's make the entire season about them trying to earn their place
Hmm.
as the Power Rangers. And trust me, I got resistance all the way up to endings, you know
Wow.
um but I think, in the end it worked, and 20 years later, I'm still
And you
talking
know
about
what?
it. People like it, so
That's true. And it's funny because you say that. I kind of forget that, and I think a lot of people forget that. Yeah, yes, we don't really take account of it. They're B team, but like literally, they were the B team. Like they were the second in command type of thing. They were like reserves type of thing.
yeah, they
Like
were the reserves, and they were
that's
picking
what they
up the
were.
slack because A Squad was missing. But it's not until the final episode that they are officially the Power Rangers. They're
Yeah,
just the bench warmers that
like
happen
all
to
the
get
stuff.
called in.
Like all the stuff they've been through so far,
Yeah,
all that they were still looked at as the reserve. They were still
yeah.
like underlings, which is
But
crazy, but it's so cool
but
to
again,
see.
that was like kind of the point, to like put them through hell,
Hmm.
and in the final moment they have a choice. They could
Yes.
sell out and take the easy road like A Squad, or even though they've just been like kicked down and like treated as, you know, bench warmers, they still decided to do the right thing. And, you know, they weren't thinking about themselves. They were thinking about the Earth and the entire galaxy. And they put themselves on the line. And that's what makes them the true Rangers. Like, there's no way the A Squad can beat that, no matter how skilled and trained and how much equipment they had, because they, in the end, they had their hearts were weak because they took the sellout. You
And
know,
I love the fact, especially you did at the end, like you gave them choices, and it showed like in life you're gonna have choices. You know you can choose A or B, like the red pill, blue pill, whatever pill, but you have options in life. You know that will take you in different trajectories. You never know, but it's up to you. Which you know, it evidently is your choice. And I love that. You know, do you want to stay a ranger? do you want to? Do you want to? Okay, now that you want to stay a ranger, do you want to try to go above now? Do you want to be the next level of this thing, or do you want to say, you know, the lower level, or
right?
you want to?
Or
You
like
can
Jack.
believe.
Jack was like, I'm gonna peace out and go back to, I'm gonna
Yeah,
run a legit organization for the homeless and not steal anymore. But he's like, you know, his whole idea was like, I learned so much from this experience.
yeah,
Now I know how to better serve the people. And so
yeah,
he was basically like the most powerful dude in the
yeah.
universe, and he put it aside to go back to doing what he loved because
Yep.
he earned that choice, you know?
And then you have somebody like Sky who learned, okay, it's not all about me, and you know, he learned also how to be a team player, you know,
Hmm.
and that way in itself, he became a leader. You know, he learned how to be a leader in itself because like now he got to got to that level. Like, oh, you know what, I can do this now. I am at this. I can do this. You know, I'm not like how I was before. I'm a changed person. I'm a better person
Right.
now. And then did you get everybody kind of like moves up a color, which is never done before
Hmm.
unless it was passed down. But you know, everybody, you never think of, oh, this person move up here. Oh, it's like
Right.
just
Well,
any job.
we were trying to establish him as like ranks, but not
Yeah,
so much like no one was necessarily lesser than
right,
someone else. They were just kind of like, you know, it was like the team leader, the second in command, but it wasn't like Pink Ranger was, you know, not and
right.
important, you know. And again, you know, sometimes it comes up as a controversy, but I thought it was cool that it, you know, and this was from real conversations with the girls. The girls didn't want to move up. The
Mm,
girls didn't want to change their colors. They were like, like the actual actresses were like, you know, Monica
yeah,
was like, I'm the Yellow Ranger, and Alicia was like, you know, I'm forever pink, you
that's
know.
awesome.
Um, and it's like, you know, again, I think it's important because even in the military, it's like, yeah, you don't want to be. I'm terrible with military things. Like, oh, everyone wants to be the general, you know,
Right.
but sometimes you're best serving the unit in the
Hmm.
position you are. Like, not everyone needs to be in charge. Sometimes you just need to be really good at the job you have, and that
Right.
makes
That's
you
true.
the best, you know.
That's true.
So we were, you know, we didn't spend lots of time on it, but we were just trying to show little stories like that. Like there's, but I, you know, again, another huge battle that I didn't really win till the end because they were so scared, but making the Red Ranger a woman. Um,
Mm,
you know, and again, I was trying to play off like, you could be pink, you could be red. It doesn't matter. It's not a
true.
guy thing or a girl thing,
It's
or,
just a
you
rank.
know, in hindsight, I get some kickback, some, you know, hate because it's like she becomes the Red Ranger, or she is the Red Ranger, and then she turns evil. And it's like that was not like any
Right.
kind of commentary on it. It's just how the chips were laying, and it was more important to me that she was a woman than the fact that you know she was a
And she was
great, you
badass.
know.
Honestly, she was a badass character.
And keep in mind, even as a woman, she was the best of the best. She just made a
Yes.
choice,
Yes.
a moral choice,
Yeah. And
and
I
they
don't think
all
they were.
did, you
Yeah,
know.
they weren't evil. They were just they just chose up. They just chose. They had a choice. Well, once again, they had a choice. Do I want to
Well,
do
like she
this?
said, she said we're the best and we're always on the winning team. And from their
Yeah.
point of view, Grum was gonna win. And
That's
so
it.
it was like,
Yeah.
might as well,
There was
you
no
know,
evil spell. There was no, no type of magic that happened or a program in their system or whatever. No, they
yeah.
just they just chose a better job. You know, they
And
like
when you think about it, Doggy and even like Birdie and Silverback, like they were no box of cookies.
no,
You know what I mean? They rode those Rangers hard.
yeah,
So again, the story is you run the gauntlet, you get put through hell. If you come out the other side and your soul is still intact, you're the best. If you
mm-hmm.
make it but you're cracked and you're like looking for the easy way to go the next level, then you're not the best. You know what
That's
I mean?
true.
I think that applies in sports and
Yeah,
art
a lot of
and
things. Yeah,
everything, and so that was, again, there's like lots of deep meanings that I had in my head that are like, on the surface, we have 22 minutes and puppets and robots and lasers and of course Disney is like,
oh yeah,
they they were like, okay, Dino Thunders was for 7-year-olds, so SPD is for 5-year-olds, and I'm like,
right.
SPD is not for 5-year-olds, but they would take the scripts and they were really like, this is too intense, this is too mature, this is too, and we just had to keep pushing back because in my mind, I was 7 when I saw Star Wars, and if you know
Right,
Star Wars is not for kids.
right.
Like you could totally watch it, but it doesn't talk down to you. It's
That's
not,
true.
you know what I mean? It's like, uh, there's
I mean,
sophisticated stories, there's intense stuff happening, but it changed my world. I'm only talking to you today because of Star Wars when I was 7. So
right,
whenever I do a product or a project, that's always what I'm thinking. I always say SPD was my Star Wars. I was not gonna do the, you know, silly little talking flowers and stuff. And I wanted SPD to be, I wanted it to be funny, and Star
right.
Wars has humor. R2 and Rico
Exactly,
were hilarious,
exactly, exactly.
but I wanted it to be serious and I wanted it to be real, you
And
know.
I love that. And you know what? Piggyback what you're saying, because I was going to ask you this question. Um, but also, I, adults sometimes forget that they were once kids. Sometimes, and we kind of and you forget, that kids are a little bit more smart than we put them. Than we let them. Than we let them be. And I remember, like, Jesus, like they were watching Rambo and all this stuff, and as a
Absolutely.
kid,
Yeah. I
and
mean, I was probably, 8 when I saw Exorcist, fucked me up
yeah,
for life. But but I saw it and it developed me. Like there's like this
yes,
weird, and I don't want to be attacked by parents. Like, Power Rangers gets attacked by parents enough, but it's like, and I'm not a parent, and this is probably why, because of my opinions.
yeah,
But I just feel like, in this current world, and I'm talking about like since Power Rangers, like the past
right,
20, maybe even 30 years, there's this weird like protect the children
mm-hmm,
from the things. But I feel like you grow up and then you're just, because when you eventually have to go out in the world,
exactly,
and if you're like, whoa, that person looked at me weird, or oh, that person was rude, it's like, yeah, no shit, man, that's
yeah,
the
exactly,
world. And if you don't see this stuff as a kid and understand how to react to it and develop your shield like Sky, you're just gonna get pummeled. So it's like,
exactly,
it was a very weird, because there was this whole thing for, I mean, it's with all shows, but it's crazy on Power Rangers. It's called Standards and Practices, and it's this like
mm-hmm,
outside group
yeah,
that works with the networks, and they have to approve scripts before they can be uh
it's
made,
just yeah,
so that there's not any weird stuff,
right,
and but they just get so intense, and it's like weird stuff like, you know oh, there's like too much reference to the color red in this episode, and red is like the symbol of hate, and blah, blah, and we're like, fucking, it's about the Red Ranger, like we're not, you
exactly.
know what I mean? It's like, but they like get that weird, and you have to like push back, and you have to like rewrite and phrase things differently so it doesn't
If I can remember it correctly, watching something like I think it was about Married with Children, like a lot of that stuff started with, you know, moms being like suburban moms at home, like watching, TV and just seeing something and like, oh, I don't like this, and then just start writing letters,
exactly.
and
And
then
that's what I'm saying. It comes down to like this coddling and protecting, and
yeah,
like, so, and that's why there's like late night and then prime
mm-hmm,
time, and the lower you go into the kids
right,
zone, the stricter it is. So of course we were like Saturday morning, so they were, you know, if you watch. even our stock footage, if you watch the footage from Dekaranger and then you watch SPD, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see that all the impacts are edited out. Like we're
Right.
allowed to fight, but not have contact. So that's
Right.
why it's like it looks like some weird gymnast show because they're just grabbing each other and somersaulting and everything. It's because you can't actually punch,
Right.
and then you can show the result of the impact, but no one can lay down like they're dead. Like when everybody hits, they got to go like so that the kids. And I don't know who these kids are that they're talking about, but they need, the kids need to know that that person's alive,
Right.
And we had to make a big deal of showing that the Crybots were robots, so that we
Right.
could shoot them and could knock them over. Um, you know.
That's always a big deal. What's it? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had the same thing with the foot soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in the comics, they were just regular humans. Even in the movie, live action. But in the cartoon, they had to make sure that like, hey, they're robots.
Right.
So they could hit them and all that stuff. So it won't be like you said, like standard practices and like, hey, this is like too much and all that.
Yeah, and it's a weird. Again, I'm no psychiatrist or psychologist or anything, but it's like to me, a kid seeing Power Rangers is gonna want to kick, you
Yeah.
know. And it's like whether it's like, oh no, in the show they're kicking robots, or people they're gonna kick their friend. That's just how it goes. So it's really more about like parents maybe watching, and I'm not just talking about Power Rangers. I'm not defending Power Rangers. I'm talking about everything.
It's just anything. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are a violent ass culture, and it's, and it's cool and it's funny, the different the different groups, and they're like, oh, like Hollywood's so violent, but then it's like they're all like hunting and killing animals and stuff like for fun.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's you just can't avoid it. So it's like what we need to do though is just embrace it, the fun of the entertainment, and then teach our kids what's right and what's wrong.
That's true.
And what's entertainment and what's real life, because if you are a fan of Star Trek, that show had like rough up and down roads because Gene Roddenberry's philosophy, which is amazing, and it gave us probably the strongest science fiction ever created.
Right.
But his idea was that in this future, there was no conflict, there was no war, there was no physical violence. Everyone treated everyone with respect, which is amazing. But what they ran into is, as they were writing shows, conflict is the gravy of a show.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If there's not conflict, it's literally just people talking to each other.
I don't think there would be S.P.D. or any other type of shows if it wasn't for Gene Roddenberry to
absolutely.
something
Absolutely.
like that. And,
there would be no Star Wars. There would be no.
No.
It's science fiction pre-Roddenberry was very very sterile.
Right.
You know. And then in the 50s, it got like maybe a little campy, but it wasn't serious. Like Roddenberry showed us the possibility of a real future.
Yes, true.
And we were talking about S.P.D, how real it is. It's like we are almost Star Trek. We're closer to Star Trek than anything. We have our communicators. We have our data pads. We have holodecks. We have people living in space right now.
If we could just get that teleportation down, right? You know, just get that teleportation down. That'd be great. It'd be really great. Shout out to Lucille Ball because she was the one that like trusted into
amazing.
To like
she told that line multiple times to make sure that happened.
Yeah, Lucy. I love Lucy. You have done so many works, so many things, and I'm a lover of makeup effects. I love knowing behind the scenes stuff, and like from The Thing to like The Blob, and all these things, all these shows. And you have done so much over the years. It's still doing so much stuff. What got you? What was the thing that got you into want to be like the makeup artist that you are now? Like, what got you? Like, what movie or TV show that was like the thing,
I
to
mean,
start that.
100%. Like I said earlier, Star Wars was just, So again, I was a kid. You have to remember, I'm old. You can tell this is like the worst lighting and everything for me. I'm looking at the image. I'm like, damn, I just look like this like 1,000-year-old dude sitting in the car.
Ah,
But so I was a kid when Star Wars like first came out. I know that seems like inconceivable, but so you have to remember this was in the '70s, so there was no internet. You know,
mm,
uh, like I said, Star Trek kind of changed science fiction, but then Star Wars made it like pop culture.
right.
So like when I would go to the library, because I used to have to go to the library, there was no movie, there was no books on like the making of movies or on special effects.
Right.
So peel back a couple years before, I was 7 when Star Wars came out, but I'd seen The Wizard of Oz,
Mm,
and that's what really was like, that's what I want to do. But I had no concept of how it was done or anything. Star Wars comes along and they actually published books and stuff of like, this is how we did it. And I think it was in the summer of '78. There was even like a 2-hour made for TV special about the making of Star Wars. And they showed
yes.
the guys building the models and sculpting the creatures. And, um, but again, I was a kid and those were like very focused on just a few people. So in my mind, I was like, oh, like the guys at ILM, like they do everything. There was like 10 people made this movie. And you would see the like Joe Johnston doing the storyboards and then designing and then like building a miniature. So I was like, oh, you just need
Right.
to know how to do everything. So from basically the time I was like 7 to 18, still no internet.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I just found every book and every, little, tutorial, any person that I could meet that was doing stuff. And I just basically trained myself to do makeup effects, to build miniatures, to do sets, to, illustrate. And, there was this amazing book. And anyone who's out there who's just a
Mm,
fan of like movie making in general, there's a book that is, forgetting the name of it, but it's basically Industrial Light and Magic. I
okay.
think it might be called like the first 25 years or something. It's a big, thick coffee table book,
Mm,
and it goes, I can't say in depth, but now you have the internet, so anyone can look at it and be like, oh, this is how you do a face cast, and there's maybe
right.
2 paragraphs, but now you know what that is, and then you can go look up more information. But this book is my Bible. Like I just
Wow.
learned about every single aspect, and the day I graduated high school, I just packed up. I traded my car in for a van that the Atlantic Bell or whatever the phone company was had just like they just
Oh
broke
God.
up the they like broke up the monopoly or whatever, so they were
Yeah.
selling off all their vans. So I traded my Chevy Chevelle Laguna, which I regret because it was a 71 Chevy Chevelle Laguna SS. So it was an East Coast car. It had rust. It was like, it wasn't in perfect condition, but it had like this V8, like it was a killer machine. It was so big that like I was like a grandma, like I could barely see over there. But years later, I ended up working with this director, Michael Mann, who did like Heat and Miami
Oh
Vice and all that
wow.
stuff. And he had the same car, but like all tricked out. And I was just like, oh my God, I used to have that car. And he was like, no, you didn't. I'm like, no, really, I had a. And he's like, no, dude, this is like a $200,000 because it was like totally tricked out. And
Oh
I was like, yeah, I know, but the base of it was still the same. Like
yeah.
maybe mine could have been that. But anyway, I traded it for this van, and I just packed everything I had, all my art. I had a bunch of animals. I brought
Oh
an alligator with me and a
what?
11-foot boa. I just packed them all in the van, and I just drove to LA. Didn't know anybody, didn't know anything, and
You
you know,
travel with an alligator
yeah, he was little. He was only like a foot and a half.
and a boa.
Yeah,
Wow. I would
yeah.
never have. I was thought you maybe say like you had brought your dog or something, but that is
No, I
you
didn't. The
you
dog
worked
was
your
a
way to
family
doing something
dog, so I didn't get to
absolute.
bring her. But I ended up with a dog like a couple years later. But yeah, I brought my reptiles
You
and
were on
all
your
my
way to
art
doing something.
supplies.
You were on your way to doing something fun and
Yeah,
crazy weird.
and everyone, my family, everybody's like, "You'll be back in 2 weeks, loser," and I was like, "Never coming back," And I got out and, um, had nothing on my resume. I'd done some like commercial art stuff in Manhattan because I'm from Jersey originally.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I drove the whole. It was the longest you can go, except maybe from Alaska or Hawaii.
Now, how hard is it for when you set out? For a lot of people think I'm gonna go make it. I'm gonna go out to California and stuff and just I'm gonna get it really fast. It's not always like that. Like
it's not always like that. Unfortunately, I am the story that throws the curve and gives everyone delusions of grandeur because I got super lucky. So everyone was trying to say, don't go. Again, you have to remember this is the 80s.
Yes.
LA was a mess. There was the gang wars. There was the smog. There was like all. So LA was like, what all those 80s movies were like, the Rumble in the Bronx and the that's why everyone thought Blade Runner was really going to happen, because we were almost there in the 80s. Like, it was just like you were more likely to get killed walking down the street than so everyone was like, don't go. But at the time, again, it's a different world. Anyone anywhere now can work in Hollywood because Hollywood isn't a place, it's an idea.
Is that that's true.
So you could be doing digital work and send it in, or most states have filming. When I was growing up, the closest place that film work happened was New York. I was just 20 minutes from New York, but it was all productions on location from LA. So 18-year-old me would walk up and be like, hey, can I get a job? And they're just like, you got to go to LA, and then they'll fly you back here. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. So so I made the 3,000-mile trek, and but even my guidance counselor was like, really, you can't just go out there. You're like, you weigh 90 pounds, you're and she was like, why don't you maybe like plan a weekend trip and go visit and go to some studios,
play safe,
try to. And I was just like, no. I'm like, if I'm going, I'm going. Like, it's do or die, So she had the classic, like, her sister's best friend's boyfriend's uncle, had a friend who was like in Hollywood,
Right.
So she was like, here's the number. If you're in trouble, call this person, right?
Oh, wow.
So, of course, this is a long ass story, but I get out here and, I had like maybe $600 to my name. And, the van broke down like in like Missouri or something. I ended up spending a couple $100 to like degum the radiator. And then, I get out, and then right on the 101, like coming into LA, the drive shaft drops out. And, so I was like, all right, this is it. It's like 4th of July weekend. A tow truck comes. He's like, everybody's closed, but I got a buddy in South Central that can maybe hook you up, No idea. I'm like, fine, So they take me there, and the guy's like, well, we're not working this weekend, but you're welcome to stay here, and we'll figure it out on Monday. So I'm like in the van, and then like as the day is moving on, all these dudes are coming around and lowriders and stuff. Everyone's like parking all around the van. People are coming up, knocking on the window, going like, hey, you got problems with your van? Like, why? You can take this car. Why don't you take this car to Santa Monica? Enjoy yourself. We'll take care of your van and stuff. I'm like, no, I'm cool. And I just ended up like waiting until the middle of the night, and everyone was finally gone. And like, I was like, my heart was beating. I was so scared, but I got out and I just fixed it myself. The bolts had just broken, and I may have compensated a couple bolts from around the garage, And then I got out of there. I ended up getting into Hollywood, and all I knew was Hollywood. I didn't know, in my mind, Hollywood was like, you ever watch like Pee-wee's Big Adventure or something? And it's
love
like,
that movie.
They're on the Warner Brothers back lot, and there's like nuns talking to aliens, and they're pushing by the big paintings that look like the Grand. I thought that was Hollywood. I didn't realize that.
For so long, I thought that was too.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, those were lots that you needed access to. So I thought I was just going to walk around and be like, oh, hey, there's Steven Spielberg. Hey, can I come work for you? And, but I ended up I didn't think the van was going to run anymore. So I parked it, and there was this one apartment building, the only apartment building for miles on the Sunset Strip. And they had a vacancy. And I went in, and somehow I just sweet talked the guy into renting me a place
Wow.
Even though I didn't have the down payment, and I told him I had a job, but I couldn't get the job unless I had a place. I have no. Someday I need to find that guy and like just like buy him a car or something, because I don't
Yeah.
know if he took pity on me, or if he was gonna sell me for in sex trafficking or something. But he was just like, oh yeah, sure, you could just have an apartment. Like this would never happen today. Um, but I ended up getting the apartment, and then I went across the street, and on a payphone, which again, no one probably even knows what that is anymore. I
Yeah. Look
called
it
the
up, guys.
number, this woman Darren, and I was like, hey, my guidance counselor said, if I was coming to LA to give you a call. And she was like, oh, great. Yeah. Like, let me know the dates when you're planning on coming. And I was like, no, I'm here. And she was like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm just standing at the corner of Fairfax and Sunset. And she was like, holy shit. Um, and she was like, hang on, my husband and I are going to come get you. And so she came, and they took me to this little Italian place. They were also from Jersey, and they're like, you'll love the pizza. I didn't love the pizza. I was too fresh out of Jersey. I was like, no. Um, I showed them my little resume and my portfolio, and they were like, all right, well, you got balls.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, so she was a production coordinator, and at the time she was working for Mel Brooks, and his name was Simon. He was a construction coordinator, and he worked at this shop where they build all the sets for TV shows and commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, all right, well, you're a talented artist, but they're like, we don't deal with that kind of stuff. But now we know you're here. We'll figure out if, there's something we could do for you. So they
Right.
fed me. And at this point, I was broke. So they took me to this local pet store, and we got rats and stuff to feed my snakes. And they were like, oh my God, this kid's crazy, but we love him. And uh, so I went around. I went to like McDonald's and Burger King with my resume, and because I was like, I need money to eat. Like I don't know what to do,
Right.
and I was too qualified
Mm-hmm.
for that. I think because I tried to pad out my resume a little with like some
Okay.
art jobs and stuff. Which again, if you saw this resume, you'd be like, what? Like painted windows on a store, whatever. But I think the fact that again the 80s, like they didn't want anyone that had like ambitions and stuff, and so they
Right.
wouldn't even like. I was like, please, I just need, and they were like, nope. So I ended up getting a telemarketing job. Sorry, this story's so long. I just want
No,
people
no,
to
it's
know
fine.
like how this happens. So now I'm out here for like 4 days. So I got this telemarketing job, which I don't even, now those don't exist. Now it's all bots and stuff. But basically they would put you in a cubicle. They would give you a list of phone numbers that you would call, and you were trying to sell people toner. And you had to show up at like 5 in the morning because you're calling offices on the East Coast. So I did like a 3-hour shift. I sold like a couple $100 worth of shit. And they were like, oh wow, you're great. And I was like, I don't know, I just and so I got like half the money or something, so I was gonna get like $150 or something. So I was like, sweet. And then I went home, and the apartment had like a phone line, and it had an answering machine. So I checked my messages, and it was Simon, and he's like, hey, the unions just went on strike,
Cool.
and but we have this commercial due tomorrow or the end of the week or something. He's like, you're new in town, so would you be willing to cross a picket line and be a scab? And I was like, I don't know what that means, but if you're gonna pay me, I am there. So I went, and I'll never forget, there was just these big 4x8 flat walls, super boring. I was just painting them yellow. Oh, so first I get there, and his boss is like, yeah, the kid can sweep the floor. And Simon was like, no, this kid's actually talented. Like, let him paint. Like, he could actually paint these walls for you. And he's cheap. So I'm getting to paint the walls. And then this other dude comes in. He's non-union. He's coming to, pick up some extra work. And he's having a conversation with Simon. And Simon's like pointing to me. And I'm like, ooh, am I in trouble already? What's going on? So the guy comes up, and we start working on the thing together. And he's like, hey, so I'm the set carpenter for this low budget sci-fi movie. And I'm trying to find he's like, they're talking to me about, control panels and, TIE fighter cockpit. He's like, I don't know what they're talking about. And Simon said, you're into that kind of stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, absolutely. And he's like, so you do like sci-fi stuff? And I was like, yeah. So I show my little portfolio, my little models that I built and everything. And he's like, oh wow, great. He's like, yeah, you wanna come work on this movie? And And I was like, yeah. And I go, when would that be? And he's like, oh, well, I'm going after lunch. And I was like, oh shit. Like, now what do I do? So at lunch, I'm like freaking out because I'm like, I don't want to miss this opportunity. But Simon just gave me this job, and I don't. And I went in the office and I said, hey, Simon. And he's like, I know. He's like, I told him to take you. And I was like, really? Like, you needed
Oh
me.
wow.
And he said, well, no, I need people to be here, but I brought you in so you could meet people, so you could go live your dreams. He's like, now you met people, go live your dreams.
Get out of
So,
here.
yeah. So I go onto this movie, and it had a bunch of like wrestlers in it. It had Big John Studd and Rowdy Piper and Tora
What?
Tanaka, Professor Tora. It was called when I was working on it, it was called The Black Forest. I think when it was released finally, it was called Hyperspace. It was a
Ah,
super low budget movie. It was like $100,000 movie, maybe even less. It was the cameraman from Pee Wee's Playhouse. That was when that was popular, so he had enough clout to get somebody to give him some money. And
mm,
then and like, he was Korean, so he had a Korean producer, and then the producer knew someone that owned a Korean wicker factory, so we were shooting this sci-fi epic in this like wicker factory in
wow.
Koreatown. And yeah, it was crazy. Big John Studd hit me in the head with a pipe and knocked me out, like, so that was one of my first war stories. But again, that was the first time I'm working on a movie. Everything I know, I've like taught myself or just read in books, and I don't know shit. And I'm 18. Everyone else is like, I don't know, they seemed old at the time, but they're probably like
Right.
early 20s, and then all the way up to like old timers, like 50, 70, Um, but everyone was happy with what I would like. They would show me something and I could just do it. So I'd be with the carpenter building the sets, and then someone would come and be like, hey, we need to, make this mold on this creature. Can you help? And then by the end of the week, I was like in charge of making the molds. And then, I was building props. And then the production designer, um, he had production design things like uh, Army of Darkness and like really cool shit. He was this amazing model maker, and he taught me how to like make spaceship like from scratch, not from like
Right.
kit. So I was like just absorbing. And again, I was a kid, so in my mind, this was like a year-long process. This literally probably like 3 weeks or 5 weeks. I don't know, but my whole life changed. But towards the end of it, the designer and the producer had some kind of arguments about budget or whatever, and the producer's like, "Screw this, I'm out of here." And the designer and so the producer turns to me and he's like, you look like you know what you're doing, kid. You're in charge. So suddenly I was in charge of the art for the movie. And I was like, what? And everyone was like, no, like, we're loving your ideas. So it's like, you come up with the stuff and we'll help you. So I ended up finishing the movie. And so now how movies work is, they can take anywhere from like 20 to 1,000 people, right?
Right.
All those people, even if it's the smallest movie or the biggest movie, when that movie ends, usually those people break up, So I think we had maybe like 50 people on our crew. So
Right.
those 50 people maybe went on to like 10 different projects. You know what I mean? So like the wardrobe people went and did like a Victorian period piece, and the
Right.
model makers went and did like a World War II movie, and the set guys went and did, but they all called me and said, come work on a movie. Come on. So the week after my first movie, I was like, oh, now what do I do for a job? And then suddenly I had 10 jobs. So then I was like working in shifts and doing some stuff at home, and like, I'll do
Wow.
a prop for you, but I'll come build your sets during the day, and then I'll come work on the wardrobe at night. And and it was because of things like that I ended up working on like I would just do like little bits and pieces for like Hocus Pocus or I don't know, like all these crazy movies.
I
But
saw
then
you did Jingle All the Way too as well. Cause
yeah. So that was a little later on. This is still in the 80s. Um, but then the designer went on to this movie called Space Invaders, and so Space.
Oh, I know that
Yeah,
movie.
remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Space Invaders was bigger than um hyperspace. Space
Right.
Invaders was like $1 million, but it was still a low budget, and it was super ambitious because
Mm.
There were outer space and there was aliens and there was,
You're right.
it was crazy. So for $1 million, you know, because even Star Wars that was, 10 years prior was like, you know, 15 million or something. So we're trying to do inflation. And then remember in the 80s, inflation was crazy. So
Yeah,
like it is now, right? So everything was more expensive. We were trying to pull it off. The producer was the producer of Nightmare on Elm Street. So he was like used to working with low budget. But the
that's a,
director
that's
was a model maker who, he and his buddy, who was also an amazing model maker, wrote the script, ended up getting the money and the producer. But it had so much art department in it. They hired the designer from the first movie I worked on, and they were like, we need a huge team, but we just can't afford it. So we need like cheap, talented, but cheap people.
right.
And so Anthony, the designer, was like, "Oh, I got just a kid, right?" And so so they ended up on Hyperspace. I was making $100 a week. So again, when I say that, it sounds like I'm
But
talking
that's
about
a
like
lot
a
of money
19.
back then.
I mean, my rent was $600 a week.
Oh,
So I
oh
wasn't, but I didn't give a shit because I was working on a movie. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I just figured out how to make it up. So luckily on Space Invaders, they bumped me to 150 a week, so I was able to cover my rent, and then they bought me food, and I literally never left the stage because I was just working 24/7. I would just like fall asleep in the spaceship and then wake up and start working again.
Oh
But
man.
as the director was realizing the different, talents and stuff that I had, he would like nurture them and push me in different directions, and he would say, um, like, oh, hey, we need some model spaceships. Can you build these? And I'd be like, sure. And then he'd be like, oh, we need to make these helmets for the Martians. Can you make the helmets? And then, at one point, he was buddies with the guys at ILM, like George Lucas's company that did Star Wars and stuff. And they were supposed to do matte paintings and all these effects, but they ended up getting some show and getting busy. So they still did a bunch of the final stuff, but they couldn't help as much as they wanted. So I remember one time he came in and said, hey, they were supposed to do a matte painting and they can't do the matte painting. He's like, I don't have money to do the matte painting. Do you think you could do the matte painting and I'll just like buy you McDonald's, while you're working on it? And I was like, fine. And I went to my ILM book. Okay, what's and looked at the different matte paintings, and I'm like, all right, I guess I can do this. And I did the matte painting. And so anyway, I did all this stuff. And then how the story goes, we're getting to the end of the story now. As the story goes, so this is like my second movie that I'm like a big part of. I had done like little
Mm-hmm.
pieces, but somehow the director gets a screening for Spielberg.
Mm.
And so Spielberg's watching the movie, and the director said he keeps leaning over and going like, "Oh, that miniature is great. Like, who built that?" And like, "Oh, this kid Greg." And he's like, "Oh, I love these costumes. Who made those costumes?" "Oh, this kid Greg." And like, "Oh, did you have George's company do that effect?" "No, this
Wow.
kid Greg did it." So the movie's over. Spielberg picks up the phone. He calls Katzenberg over at Disney at the time and says, "Hey, I just watched the cutest little movie. You got to buy it." So Disney ended up buying the movie for like $5 million. So remember, we made it for $1 million. They bought it
Mm.
for $5 million. It got a theatrical release, made like $40 million. So $40 million against $1 million, like it was a record holder for a long time. And then it came out on VHS. And then when Disney Channel came out, it was like
Right.
running in rotation. It was like the #1 most popular movie on Disney Channel for years. But the part that was important to me is Spielberg hangs up the phone. He says, "All right, they're gonna buy your movie." He's like, "But can I get that kid Greg's number?" And a couple
Uh,
months later, I end up getting a call from Amblin, and they're like, "Hey, we got a project, and Steven remembered you, and we're wondering if you could do this for you." So I ended up getting to work on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
oh my gosh.
But also from Space Invaders, I ended up meeting John Criswell, who was doing the animatronics for the Martians.
Right.
And there were things he did an amazing. I think to this day one of the best animatronics I've ever seen. They were amazing, but there were things that the director didn't like, and for whatever reason, the director would be like, "Hey, go tell John to change this thing." And so like little punk ass me would have to go in.
Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no. I think we lost visual right at the, right at the end of the story, man. It was going to get so good. Let's see. Is it back? Can we get him back? Let me see. We, let's see. No, 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 no. It's going so good. Oh, okay, we're back.
Am I back? Okay, I was
All
trying
right.
to log back in.
Oh, I was about to say maybe we gotta log back in. Yeah, okay. All right. I was like, this is just so good. um. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're at the part of
Oh, we're talking about Criswell, right?
yes.
So Criswell, we're like button heads, and I'm just like this little dumb henchman for the director because he won't go in and talk to Criswell. He's scared of him or something. Um, but I would like argue points and stuff, and so the movie ends, and then I get a call, and who's it from? But John Criswell, and he's like, "Hey, I just really liked all the different things you were doing," and he's like, "I have my own little makeup effects, special effects shop." He's like, "But I want to branch out into, models and costumes, and like I think it would just be cool if we worked together." And so I ended up going over, and so he had another partner.
Right.
And so I went and I was an employee of theirs, and we did this other movie with the same producer from Space Invaders, and that shot in um, like Romania or something. So those two guys went over to do it, and I was like just doing stuff in the shop. And while they were over there, the other guy decided because he had a family, he had kids. He's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be like leaving the country. I can't. So he ended up quitting. So Crizzle called me long distance, and he's like, can't talk long. This shit's expensive. But he's like, you're my partner now. So I became a partner in the company, and then we ended up doing a couple movies. One of them was called Adventures in Dinosaur City.
That
And
sounds so
then
familiar.
another one, it was another movie that Disney bought. And then another one was we did the Ninja Turtles live stage show.
Oh really?
Like, yeah, like rock out the shell or something,
Yeah.
whatever that was. So then we get a call from Jim Henson, and Henson is like, "Hey, oh, so we ended up on the cover of Variety magazine, and like our dinosaurs are on the cover, which I still have a copy of it signed by Mel Brooks because part of the story I skipped, but one of my first jobs too was I got 1 day of working on Life Stinks with Mel Brooks. I was just like a PA, which was awesome. It was amazing to meet him. But he remembered me, and he remembered that I was like, I'm gonna do special effects and
Yeah.
and so he signed. He saw my name on the cover of Variety, and so he signed it. And he's like, "You did it, kid. I believed in you," or
Oh,
something. He's like, very cool.
so
It's
wonderful.
still on my office wall to this day. But so Henson sees that, and he sees the Ninja Turtles. They had just done a Ninja Turtle movie. So he calls John and I and says, "Hey, Henson had a shop in New York, and a shop in London, but they were doing this new show in LA, so they were opening a shop." And he's like, "We need people to work in the shop. We need LA locals to like head the shop because we're gonna send people from London and we're gonna send people from New York, but they're gonna be, fish out of water." Um, So, would you guys mind coming in and like, heading up the shop with us? And we were like, oh my God, yeah. So we went, and the show was called Dinosaurs, Jim Henson's Dinosaurs.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah. Um, and so I ended up working on that for like 4 seasons. And I was like a lead sculptor. I sculpted a bunch of the main characters, and I was the paint shop supervisor. Um, but then, maybe I did three. I can't remember how many seasons there were. But John ended up staying. But then we got another show in our shop called Babylon 5.
Oh my god, I
Um,
love that.
yeah, and so I went and I
You're
was
just
like,
a part of my childhood, dude. It's like, this is, I didn't know how much of my childhood you were a part of. Or it's just this 1 minute of just instead of dinosaurs, Babylon 5, Ninja Turtles. Like, wow.
I tried to work on everything, but we did Babylon 5. And then I got a call from a friend who was working on Batman Forever, and they needed a prop maker and some model maker. So I ended up going and doing that. And then I worked on a bunch of different stuff like that. And then Spielberg called me back, and he was doing. I was doing Babylon 5 when they were doing Jurassic Park, so I couldn't be on Jurassic Park. But then I ended up on Lost World, and then I ended up doing like 10 more movies with him. And mostly as a prop maker or model maker. So it was like, so 1 minute I was doing makeup effects, next, and then somewhere in the middle of that, I ended up working at Image Comics. Rob Liefeld, the creator of like Deadpool and Cable and
Right.
all that, he had founded Image with Todd McFarlane and Mark Silvestri and all those guys. He wanted to make a big splash at Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
And I was into comic books and comic book conventions and stuff, and so I had gone to some local, I forget which one it was, but it was like some local LA comic thing, and I ran into Danny Mickey, who was Rob's inker, and then went on to be McFarlane's inker, and now he does like DC. He's like one of the last real inkers left in the business,
Right.
But we ended up, I can't even remember what spurred the conversation, but we ended up talking, and I was like showing him props, and he's like, oh my God, Rob would love this. You got to come meet Rob. So the next week I went, Rob was based in Anaheim. I went and I met Rob, and I'll never forget, like, he's such a crazy guy. He was just drawn. He had his big easel in his office. He was in the penthouse floor of the A's, like at A Stadium. There's like this building next to it. So you're like at the top of the building, and you could look down into Angel Stadium or A
Wow.
Stadium, whatever it was. And he wouldn't even look up at me. He was like just drawing. He's like, so you make props and stuff for movies? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, can you make that guy? And he points to Bad Rock, like it was kind of his version of the Thing from Fantastic Four.
Okay.
But I was like, this giant rock monster. He's like, can you make that to walk around Comic-Con? I was like, sure. He's like, all right. He just grabbed his checkbook, wrote a check. He's like, make it for me.
Wow.
And so I made that, and we brought it to like some comic conventions. And this was, you have to remember, again, this is like early 90s. So at that point, comic conventions, they were smaller. Even the big ones were like a hall, not like,
Right.
Even Comic-Con was like, 2 or 3
It's not
halls.
as big
It wasn't
as
like,
it wasn't the same.
yeah. And it was all comic books. So it was all pipe and drape, tables, dudes with wire racks, no women there.
Yeah.
It's just all us nerdy dudes going like, I do have Spider-Man number 17. So suddenly there's this 8-foot tall rock creature and people lost their minds, So then that started the whole, I personally feel it's like the birth of modern Comic-Con, because then instantly McFarlane was like, well, Rob can't have all the attention. So he went and hired like these girls to be dressed as, his sexy characters and stuff. And then Rob gave me like a ton of money to build this giant spaceship, the Youngblood spaceship. And then that blew everyone away because it was like 40 feet long and 18 feet high, and people can walk in it. And like there's television screens that were showing at the time. There was going to be an animated series of his show, of his characters. So it was like showing clips from the animation. And so then McFarlane went and spent like $1 million and got the Spawn Mobile. That was like a a real like Formula One car or some shit. And then Marvel was like, oh shit, we literally just have pipe and drape with a sign. So then they started like building shit, and then it became,
So
sadly, I mean,
you started
as
that.
fun as Comic Con is, it's no longer about comics anymore.
No.
But that's where that kind of all started was, um, but then all these things. So basically, that does all. People are like, why are you talking about all this bullshit? But it's like, I had never executive produced a television show before, and Disney bought Power Rangers from Saban because Disney Channel. I don't know if it was by design or just by happenstance, but it was like a predominantly girl oriented
Yeah.
channel. Like
Yeah.
they had all the, you know, Miley Cyrus and,
Yeah.
you know,
That's the Raven, Hannah Montana.
yeah, yeah. And, so they were like, we need, it's just a giant tower. Disney's a giant tower of people just calculating numbers and they're like, we're losing half our audience because we're only,
Right.
we're getting all the girls, but we're not
And
getting
little
the boys.
kids. It's
Yeah.
just the older boys, yeah.
Yeah. So they did that crazy, what was it? Like, it was billions. I think it was 2
Yeah.
billion or something. $2
Yeah.
billion to buy Power Rangers. And they took a bunch of the crew, the writers and the producers and stuff. But it had gone for like 10 years under Saban. And at that point, everyone had their like groove. And it was shot in LA. And it was like this
Right.
tight knit family. 10 years of any show, and you're a
Right.
family. So Disney buys it and they're like, cool. And then they're like, oh, by the way,
New Zealand.
screw the unions. We're going overseas, And then so screw the stunt team, And so then it became like a little bit of, the people that stayed were like, we're betraying the other, So, people like those seasons, but there was just a lot of internal turmoil because Disney was forcing people to do stuff and they were fighting back, or they literally were like, we don't care, just whatever, just film it. So basically, and the ratings just it was not worth $2 billion. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody was getting whatever
Right.
share, and then Power Rangers was like down here, and they're like, okay. So they're like, but we did pay for this shit. Now, meanwhile, no matter what the show did, the toys were
Yeah.
making money. So there was a part of Disney that was like, we're not getting rid of that shit. Like,
Yeah,
do
they're
whatever
making
you
so much
need to
money on the back
do.
end.
But, so they were like, all right, well, the people that were running it were like, we don't want to do this anymore. So they're like, we're going to get some fresh blood in. And, they're like, let's try and shake this up and see if we can make it different, make it, bring viewers back. Right. So Bruce had written some shows for Disney Channel previously, like Jet Jackson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they were looking at different people, different teams. It's a bigger show in that, like, a lot of the other shows have like 12 episodes or 22 episodes. Power Rangers is like 38 episodes. So they wanted like a pair. At the time, so I was writing comic books for Image, and I had my own titles. I had sold a title named Blue to, I want to say it was Paramount. And they were talking about making it into a TV show. And it's kind of SPD like a little bit. It's, not lots of, there's action in it, but it's not like a kung fu show. But it is,
Right.
it is like My So-Called Life in Space.
Oh.
So it's about teenage angst and, but having abilities and secrets. So they were like, we want to make this show, but you can't write it or direct it because you don't have the experience to helm a network show. They're like, you need to partner with a showrunner. So we were looking for somebody who had experience. So my producing partner, Sherry Bryant, met Bruce. He read the comic and loved it. So we were talking about him coming on to my show. In the meantime, he got this offer for Power Rangers. And he was like, oh, I think I got a guy that could like bring something to this. So he said, hey, how would you like to come onto an existing show?
Right.
And I was like, yeah, because in my mind, I was like, I need these credits, And and it was cool because in the beginning, Bruce was just like, "Yeah, sure, I'll write it," but it's like, what do you want to do? So I like laid out my whole plan that it was in an academy and that they weren't going to be the Rangers and stuff, and we went into the room and pitched it, and it was a hard sell. They were like, like we don't, but they were the first thing they said to me is like, we need to change it up, we need to make it fresh and different.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I think I can't remember if Iron Man was out yet, but Blade had definitely been out. There was like some big comic book shows like X-Men or like big movies.
X-Men were definitely out.
Yeah. And so they were like, comic books are hot, and so we need to make Power Rangers like a Marvel thing,
Right.
And so because I had written comic books, they liked that. And then they were like, the season, without knowing what the story was or anything, they knew it was the future. They knew there was aliens. So they were like, so you make spaceships, you do makeup effects, you do animatronic aliens, you do, so I just like hard sold them on, you may not like the storyline I'm going for, we could fix that, but what I can bring you is this whole, I had this whole toolkit of all these tricks that I learned from, working with Steven Spielberg and directing with Corman and making puppets with Jim Henson. And that sold them, Each step was a fight, though. They didn't want me to direct. And I was like, I cannot make this work unless I direct. Like, I can't show all my tricks to another director and expect him to create the illusion on the first try,
That's true.
And, so I ended up winning that and directing in the beginning. And then I tried to direct throughout the season, and they just would not let me. And then finally I got to bring it home in endings. And then there was they gave me the footage from the Dekaranger show, and I was like, some crazy shit.
Yeah.
It's some crazy shit. Because it was like, I was willing to do any show, but I'm like, but if this is going to be my show, I want it to be my show. And I'm like, that, I cannot deal with it. I was like, I like the ideas, fucking Doggy Kruger looks like a, used mascot from the 1984 Olympics,
Now, what was that was one of my questions. Whose idea was it, like, to transfer the Doggy Kruger from the Sentai? Because I remember watching just S.P.D, and then I watched Dekaranger after. And then I was so, and mind you, I loved the show, but I was just
but you have to view it through the eyes of the Japanese culture.
Yes.
It was not going to fly here, and it was not going to fly for me.
It wouldn't. He just looked like a mascot,
Yeah.
if it was over here. But I love the take that you guys did, that you did to it, and realized it real, more realistic, even though he's a big old dog. But
yeah. But he's alive. You believe him. Chewbacca is a big old dog, but you believe him.
And he kind of reminded me.
I said, listen, I'm like, I love the idea of this, and honestly, it's essentially the same concept design. I was like, I love the shapes, I love the colors. It looks like a furry, I'm like, let me make it real. Let me take that idea and make it real. And they were like, all right, and
it came out beautiful.
And then I did it,
And the backstory too that you gave him was really awesome, with losing his wife and his whole world, and his type of character puts them on the side of, like, up there with the Magna Defender, like, where they have a great arc. They have a great backstory to why to the reason why they the person that they are now. And Doggy Kruger, even though he was animatronic, and you can tell, but he was just so real to me, and I loved the look of him and just the whole work of him, and then try to understand how the hell you put your whole face in the helmet. But the reveal that he got to be a Ranger too, To be a shadow, one of the best, awesome looking suits too.
Oh yeah. I'll tell
Oh my
you what.
gosh,
For as crazy as all the Japanese stuff was, I feel very lucky that my season had those, because sometimes the suits are like weird. You know what
right?
I mean? Like they're always Power Rangers, so it's like fine, but it's like it would be hard to make a world real. Like some of these seasons, they're too much like a toy.
Yeah,
And
and
there's
that's what
something
they try
about
to
Power
sell.
Rangers. There's something about SPD where it's like so sleek and kind of has like a little like a NASCAR thing going. It's like
Yes, yeah,
you it's not realistic, but you aren't taken out of it by the costumes.
and the
You
SPD
know,
SWAT mode, magnificent. I love SWAT mode. It's just so freaking dope. Like
it
even
is.
when it's
It
at
is.
SWAT, it's like, oh my god, this is beautiful. This is great. The upgrades, and everyone had an upgrade. It wasn't just the Red Ranger.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
had something, had their thing. That I love that. I love uh what's the dog? The what's the name for it?
Shadow Ranger.
No, for the
Oh, Rick. Rick.
Rick. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
There's a lot of dogs. I'm a dog lover, so I was
Yes,
also so happy.
and
If
it
it was about
reminded me of the
dolphins and
show.
shit,
It
you know.
reminded me of they had like a little animatronic dog at the time that was like remember like KB Toys and stuff that was
Right,
like
right, right, right.
five
Exactly,
hundred
exactly.
bucks or something like that. And it reminded me of that. Like it's like an upgraded thing of this.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, uh, and your work, like I said, Doggy Kruger was amazing, and to know afterwards that the actor under it got to be this hilarious Knight later on, and I always thought that's a grown ass man as a ranger. That's a grown man. That like he had the whole beard and everything. I'm like, I ain't never seen a ranger with a beard until he showed up, and I was like, that's a grown ass man. That's and
Yeah, well,
I
I mean,
love
again, you have to remember he's also a grown ass man inside this animatronic dog costume. Like,
yes. Oh my
it is
gosh.
super easy to fall into. This is ridiculous, and this is a dumb show. Just keep it dumb. But I was like, no, this is serious shit.
Yeah. Oh
When
yeah.
we push in on the close up of Doggy, this is not a whip pan, comedy moment. This is a serious. There's gravitas to him turning and saying, Rangers, we need to,
Yeah.
and we would laugh on set and everything, but it was like in my mind, I was trying to make it all real, and like that was one of the things for, we had no choice. If I could have, I wouldn't have used any of the Japanese monster suits. Like, well, maybe a few of them, like the robots
Right.
and stuff were fun. I didn't like. I tried so hard to make Doggy Kruger real, and then it's weird to me when you have devastation or somebody
Yes.
and their mouth doesn't move or moves barely,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there was no money to like do anything about it and stuff. So that was like one of the things that I
But
wanted
your
to add
work,
was like was more with the book, because then
but
you
what you did
believe.
though. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
It just made it more palatable to me that this kid does a drawing and then it becomes
Hmm.
this silly monster, and then you're like, okay, it's part of the story. We're still in the real world. This is just a fake character, as opposed to you have Piggy, who's again 100% living, breathing entity, and then you team him up with even Broodwing.
Yes.
You know, I like to think it's like a helmet, but it's like it's supposed to be a face, but it doesn't move, so it just bugged the
True.
hell out of me. You know.
But it matched. I feel like that's why I like to. I love for my listeners and stuff to know certain things, especially like your backstory of how you started everything, because it it starts from how you started to get how to things look on SPD. How everything matches up. Like you started from, and I love your story, and it's just amazing how everybody took a chance and helped you out to get you to where you are now. And they saw something in you early,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before you probably could see it, and like we're gonna help him. And the fact that you got to go these different projects, especially like like doing Space Invaders and you're doing Ninja Turtles and all these type of animatronics, the fabrics and the materials you have to use for all these different things to get you to where you got to do the executive produce this show. and it showed your history, your portfolio of what you've done before. Because yes, even though we saw the creatures from over there, the monsters, how they look, and they can barely use their mouth. But you also mixed it in with the doggy Kruger or a birdie, or all the awesome makeups that you've done
Mm-hmm.
to to add to that world. So you don't even think about that they can't move their mouth because you got freaking doggy Kruger
Yeah, we
being
tried to
so
balance it out,
awesome.
and budget wise, because I was like executive. Bruce and I were the executive producers, the creative producers.
Right,
Then there's studio executives above us, and then there's, producer, like production producers. I don't want to say below, but like that handle like the money. So it was like I would have ideas, and then I'd have the studio freaking out that it was going to cost too much, and I'd have the producers freaking out that it would cost too much. So my job was to like prove
mm-hmm.
we could do that. And luckily I had, so first of all, going back to, you talk about collecting my whole portfolio. Not only was it my portfolio, but it was like the team that I built. Like Simon, who gave me that very first job, he a couple jobs after that job, I called him to help me with a project. He ended up working with me for like 25 years. you
Wow.
know um he was like an electronics genius, so he did the lighting and like Rick's I like when
Oh,
it dials the numbers and stuff,
yeah.
and he supervised the assembling of Rick and all that stuff. And then he also did the lighting for Grum when his eyes glow and everything.
Right.
And then Criswell helped me with the animatronics on Doggy Kruger. And so all these people throughout my, even though it was decades later, they like still rallied to help me get to the next level. And in some ways, I need to say, I never really thought about this, but it's like the story I wanted to tell of the Rangers, like being the B team, and then getting to be the Rangers at the end, is like almost kind of like me getting to executive produce Power Rangers, because you don't just get to executive produce a
Yeah.
show. There's a whole thing you have to go through. Like you have to like submit writing samples, and then come on as like a copy boy, and then you're
Right.
getting drinks for everybody, and then after like a couple years of that, you're like doing you're like a copy editor where you're checking people's spellings, but you're never actually writing.
Mm,
And then like, and you over years, and then you become like a polisher where you're like helping finish scripts or editing scripts, and then you'll become a staff writer where you're writing, and then your executive producer does the final rewrite. And then ultimately, after years and years and years, you may have an idea and pitch it, and then you're like, oh, okay, you worked on Seinfeld, and you worked on this, so we'll give you a shot. But at the time, it's different now because of streaming and everything. There's millions
right.
of shows. But even at the time I was doing Power Rangers, there was like maybe like 50 executive producers in the world, because the big ones like J.J. Abrams were doing like 20 shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like individual, so it wasn't like a job that you could be like, I want to be an executive producer. And so I had to like earn the right to do it, not only throughout my whole career, and come with this, like I said, like arsenal of tools that like, because I wasn't coming from a writer's standpoint. I was coming from almost like the sci-fi, like, I'm like, I wrote that spaceship in the script, but don't freak out, because this is how I'm going to film it, and I'm going to build it. And they were like,
Yeah.
okay. But even when I was doing it, like I said, I had to fight to direct. And then throughout the season, I had to fight for, I wanted every episode to have an original alien and original props. And we did it. We're probably the only season of Power Rangers to do it, but mostly because, I did a lot of it myself. And then I had guys that were like in the crew that got so into it that they were like super willing to like do the hours, and like they wanted to do original makeups, and
Mm-hmm.
so they would like work on stuff at home and everything. And I got in trouble from the producers. They're like, you can't make people. I'm like, I'm not making anybody do anything, but it was like, people were like, oh, that's cool, if I sculpt this then it'll be in the show. And so the true artists came out, and I'm talking about across the board, the costumes and the straight makeup and the
Right.
wigs, and the prop makers and the set builders, and even the script writers like would add extra things because they knew we were trying to go for it. And an amazing story would be when I wrote Boom. I had this dream of him, so when I made Rick in Dekaranger, Rick turns into the big gun, right?
Right.
So we do that too. But I was like, man, if you had a dog that can turn, like, why can't he turn into all the shit you need? I'm like, why can't he be like a mobile cooler for drinks after the fight? And why can't he have, a communication device? And why can't he,
Yeah.
you know, and I tried to fit as much of that in as I could, but you'll see when I'm writing and directing, all these extra things come in, and when I'm not, it like lessens. But when I wrote Boom, I was like, oh, I totally see Boom coming in, and Rick turned into like a moped.
Oh yes.
And the money producers were like, no, that's we're not building a moped prop. And we had the whole production meeting, and I was trying to, and they were like, no, just edit that out. That's not happening. And so it was, the production meeting was like Thursday or something. And then that weekend was like Thanksgiving or whatever. It was some like 3-day weekend, some holiday. So
No.
Miro, the production designer that was handling all the other stuff, comes up to me after the meeting and hands me some keys, and he's like, "Hey, the art department just happens to have our own white moped that we use to get around the studio."
How
He's
funny
like,
how
"If
that
you,
works.
yeah," he's like, "if you happen to come in on the weekend and turn it into Rick, good on you, mate." And so I did. I just worked that holiday weekend. I took the battleizer.
Oh,
I took the battleizer apart, and I used those Rick pieces to, and but that was because they all had my back. They wanted to see it as much as I wanted to see it, so it wasn't about budget or time. You know, and Dan Perry and Terry Green in the makeup shop, and like I said, the producers would yell like, "You can't keep these guys late," but we were just back in that makeup room, laughing our asses off, listening to music. We
what a
had
great time.
Nathan's Chicken or whatever it was, and uh, just having an amazing time. Like, it was better than like going out to a party or something. And they did amazing, makeups, and that's why every episode has at least one character, whether it's just a pizza delivery guy or just a cadet delivering laundry or whatever, in this full makeup. And those guys had worked on like Lord of the Rings, and
Awesome.
so these are like major dudes, and
So,
they just loved it like I loved it, and we just had a good time. So.
well, I gotta ask you a question. There's two things. One, the cod piece for the Red Rangers Battleizer always made me laugh. It always reminded me of it was a cameo, the group cameo.
Mm-hmm.
It was the say why that was that group. I can't even think of the, yeah, I think that's how I say it. But every time I saw the Battleizer, I saw the copies, I just had the music in my head of the I was like, it's just so off to me. Just like, but it fits. But it's so funny to me. But did it work as a toy though? Like, you can't tell what is a toy. It's like, oh, okay, whatever.
Right.
The other thing was the side weapon on their
The
civilian
sidearm, yeah.
sidearm. I never understood it, how to use it, because they use it a couple different ways on the show. But
Yeah.
I love the look of it. It's just so different than I've seen any like weapon, blaster, and any type of sci-fi.
Yeah,
And
so that has its whole own story. So the idea was, again, it's funny because you look back, you watch different seasons of Power Rangers, you even watch different Disney shows, and I don't know who makes up these rules, but they just change them all the time. And one of the mandates for us was that because we were so heavily, like, I think in past seasons of Power Rangers, they would be like kids, high school teenagers or whatever,
yeah,
and then they would turn into Rangers and have weapons. But because we were civilian police, technically they would have weapons, and Disney was like, they can't be civilians and have weapons.
mm.
but at the same time, it doesn't make sense to not have like a gun if you're a cop. So I
Exactly.
came up, I designed this thing that I called, the sidearm, and it was meant to be um, a defensive piece. So you
Mhm.
would like, so that's why it's like a shield. It looks like, like
Oh,
shin guards for soccer.
yes,
So it's
yes,
like a shin guard that you hold, so you can block stuff, um, and then it would have, because they would have to like zap people, it'd have this like little like stun gun thing that popped up,
right.
right? And it had a flashlight because I was like super into X-Files, and I loved in the X-Files when they would have those like,
Yeah,
halogen beams that would come across, and it
yeah.
was like, oh, like, so they're police that are like investigating. um so we did it. It ended up being too expensive to make the little, you know, pop up thing on every one. So there's only one unit that has that. And the idea
Oh,
was whenever it popped up, it would just be like an insert with that hero prop. And then it was the stunt ones for the rest of it. But how Power Rangers works is there's like multiple units, you
right.
know. There's almost like 3 units at all times. So I was directing the I call them the pilot. It's not but the premiere episodes, the first block. So I was dealing with the actors and all the actory stuff. But then Koichi uh, deals with the stunt unit, and then there would be like another unit that would do like inserts or. Um, so because that particular fight scene was like so involved,
Mm-hmm.
they ended up like I was probably shooting like Boom and Cat, or I was filming somebody else, but he got the Rangers
Right.
because there was only like 6 shots of the Rangers, and then so it wasn't worth like main unit moving to that location to get just um and he I don't know if we talked about it and he didn't understand, or my theory is the idea was that the little thing would pop up and your arm was always vertical. So you're never, it was never,
Right.
like, so this is a more defensive, benign position as opposed to this attack aggressive position.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he didn't want to use the insert shot or just didn't understand, or my theory is that, and this is why guns unfortunately are so cool in movies, like this is very dynamic and very cool as opposed to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he just shot it the way he wanted to shoot it, and nobody knew. And I vaguely remember a phone call, but then we got the dailies and I was like, oh my God, we're gonna have to reshoot this and Disney's gonna freak out. Like, I went through like literally a month of
Mm-hmm.
design work and everything to avoid this. And then they saw it and nobody commented. So I was like, all right, well, fuck it. If you don't care, I don't care, because it's, because they do use the defensive position I want, but then
Right.
the best is, actually, the best is, I can't remember if it's Chris, Matt, or Alicia, but they do the classic, like when you first work on a
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi or a Western, you do the boom, boom, like you
Yeah,
see in
yeah,
the shot, they're like pew, pew, um, as opposed to just holding it straight and
yeah,
tight,
yeah.
they're like poo, poo.
I always wish
Um,
that they had it as a toy, because I was like always waiting when that, or a prop maker or whatever, like to make that, because I was like, damn, that would be a dope ass prop to have in my collection, and, because it's a dope
yeah,
thing.
well,
It was different.
the secret is the reason why they make so much money on the toys is because, and the reason why we follow the Japanese season is because the Japanese company, Toei, puts
Oh yeah.
all the money, the millions of dollars, into the designing and the tooling and the fabrication of the toys, and then the U.S. gets the benefit of just basically like repackaging and that. So
Right.
we don't have to make the metal tools and the prototypes and and they'll do like maybe 1 or 2 special things. Like I think the motorcycles were ours and the battleizer was ours.
Right.
But they're like small. So there was a million. I mean, why isn't there a Grum figure? Why isn't there a Piggy figure?
That's true.
It's
Yeah.
because those characters don't exist
Outside of, yeah,
in Japan. So
that makes sense.
we ultimately got a doggy figure, but only because when Hasbro took over, they saw a potential.
And that was like honestly one of my like greatest like searches at the time. It was trying to find that Doggy Kruger. It was like, I need this figure. Like I was so happy when they brung that up. To, like, and you had the interchangeable heads. I was like, so important. That was so important. And I was like, yes, I need this.
No,
Uh,
it was a super honor to me because that was when the Black Series first started, and at that point there was like what 25 years of Power Rangers, so they did like 4 figures. They could have done from any season, and
yeah.
they picked Doggy, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. That means people really like this
Oh my god.
character,
Doggy, the whole team, the whole show means a lot to a lot of folks. Like a lot of people, more than you know. It's just like, we're here talking now about it, because I mean, there's a kid I saw just the other day who's like a child, wasn't even probably thought of really at the time of when it aired, and was watching it and was commenting on it and ranking it and everything. It was like, man, if he was only around when it was on every week, and get that feel, but it's just it has an impact, just like Mighty Morphin and everything, but it also has its impact for its own self and just the amount of makeup effects and just the storytelling, just what's the thing with the eye drops with this was one of the episodes the guy
Oh,
was
with the tear, yeah.
oh my god, it's just that like would have never thought of something like that. It was just that type of
Well, that
storytelling
was Bruce.
sticks.
Got to credit Bruce for that one. That was one of his stories. But it was like,
Uh,
but
Credit
we
to
were trying to give Sky dimension. Like, 'cause that's
yeah,
the other thing is, I love all the Power Ranger actors from all the seasons. But the show a lot of times it's written very one dimensional. You know what I mean? Where
yeah,
it's like we wanted people to grow, and in I think it was like maybe episode 3. Um, there was an early episode where it was like the Rangers are fooling around in the common room, and Sky is like reading the handbook.
right.
And Disney, like, I was filming it, and they called me, and they're like, he has to like unbutton his shirt, like he's so stiff, and like we're afraid kids won't like him, and he's got to like loosen up. And I'm like, okay, do you
That's
not understand how stories work? It's like the idea is to make him stiff,
yeah,
and maybe not have kids not like kids don't have to like everyone, but by the end of the show, you're gonna understand why he was that way,
yeah.
why he changed, and you're gonna love him. Like, and they made me like unbutton his collar, and I was like so pissed because I'm like, no, it's too early. Like we have 38 episodes. Like let it
Yeah,
eventually see him loosen up. Um, I love in SWAT where he yells. They're hearing each other yell for help, and he's like, "I'm coming, buddy." And it's
yeah,
like that would have never happened in the beginning. Like he would have never
that's
called
true.
one. But it's like it's such a small little thing. But I'm like so stupid. I'm tearing up just talking about.
Uh,
But it's like, but again, the actors were so great. But it's like it's those little things that I just fought for every day because I'm like, I know you just want everything to be peaches all the time and like kids to be like that. But it's like we're trying to teach some lessons. You can't. You don't learn to not touch the fire till you touch the fire. You know
that's
what I
true.
mean? It's like,
I mean, all those things you fought for, and whatever work didn't get to go through, but the ones that you did fought for that did, and it made the to the final cut. I mean, all of that just shows, it has its impact. It just really does. And for your work and the whole team, definitely grateful for all your hard work that you put on that show because you could have just half-assed it or just listened to the studio.
no,
But
I was all in, and but I really feel like that my greatest contribution was being all in because of my energy and I wasn't like a Cameron tyrant. I wasn't yelling at anyone. I was just
yeah,
super excited, and because of that, it was kind of contagious, and like the whole team
you
rallied.
can
Like,
feel it. You can feel it in the
I
show.
don't think Simon Riera gets enough credit. The cinematographer. It's like, he was so excited when I was like, I want it like moody. I want the control room to be moody. And like, because again, you watch Dekaranger, it's just
Hmm.
flat lit, like a 3 camera show, like
Yeah.
Three's Company or something. And I was like, dude, is there something we can do? Can we have it be like, I want shadows that people can step out of, and I want.
Mm.
And he was like, oh, really? And of course, again, productions like that cost money. We just need to keep it simple. And I was like, well, no, we'll have these standing sets where we can go crazy, and then we'll have like just a standard pattern that we use when we add new rooms and stuff.
Right.
And because I fought to like have it look better, he got excited and he pushed harder. And yeah, and we got along so well that when I left Power Rangers a few months after, I made a feature film in New Orleans, and I flew Simon from New Zealand to New Orleans to shoot the movie with me because we just got along so well, and he understood my vision and he made it happen. But I had written my take on Mystic Force.
Mm-hmm.
As Power Ranger, as SPD, I keep saying Power Rangers, forgetting that I'm talking to all Power Rangers.
Yeah.
When SPD was wrapping up, there was a little known fact. They were talking about a season 2. They wanted to do SPD season 2.
Wow.
And one of the reasons for that was because SPD was the first season in Ranger history where we were shooting neck and neck with the Sentai version.
Oh wow.
So obviously, when Saban bought the show, there was already like 10 years of
exactly. Yeah.
And so they could pick and choose, and Mighty Morphin could be mixed out of 5 seasons or whatever. Over the years, there is getting tighter and tighter. Dino Thunder got all, if not like majority of the episodes.
Yeah.
So they could watch the show and figure it out. When we started SPD, we only had like 2-3 episodes. So we had no idea
wow.
like what was coming, and that's why we created Grum, because we were like, to us, even through the translation, what's his name? Broodwing seemed like a side villain. He didn't seem like the big heavy, which was weird that in the end he was their main villain.
Yeah.
He just looked like what we made him into. So we were like guessing, but I kind of created this main story that I wanted to do, and then we were just going to use their stuff to fill in the gaps. But yeah, we like, and one of the major complaints with the fandom is like, you didn't use Omega enough, and you didn't use, Nova Ranger, and because we didn't even know that they existed till literally days before we shot our episodes. And again, money was like, yeah, they're sending the suits, but you can't afford an actor. Like that's why fucking Sam is. Sorry, I'm cursing. Jersey. You can beat me up.
Right.
That's why Sam is a ball of light, because they were like literally like, you cannot have another actor.
Yeah.
We're like, what? So, because I wanted him, like, how Blue Ranger A Squad is a alien. I wanted him to be, before he was Sam, I wanted Omega to be an alien. I thought that would be super cool. And they were just like, no, you can't, So, Bruce came up with the idea of the ball of light, and I was like, okay, whatever. And, people hate it though. People hate it, but
it got me when I saw that. It reminded me of Ghost Rider. that if you remember, the old PBS show Ghost Rider. Mm-hmm. So it just reminded me of, Ghost Rider's a Power Ranger now. he done moved up. He stepped his game up. That's how I looked at it. I was like, this is pretty cool. You combine both worlds of mine.
But at that point in the season, it was just triage. We were like, oh my god, we got this other Ranger, but we don't have an actor. So it was the stuff like that. So it was the same with Magi Ranger. We were almost done with SPD, and they hadn't even started filming. As a matter of fact, their opening sequences were filmed in New Zealand because they were liking what we were doing so much that they were like, we're going to come film with your team, So they came to start filming Magi Ranger. So again, Disney was freaking out. They're like, we can't like be this close to, we need, so they're like, people are loving SPD. Like the ratings we got for the first time ever, we had a even split 50-50 girls, boys. And the ratings were up, the toy sales were rocketing. So they're like, maybe we just do season 2. And I was all for it, I don't know what went down, but they, somehow decided, I don't know if it was like a licensing thing but they decided not to do it. So they gave me scripts for like I think it might have just been the first episode or the first 2 of Magi Ranger. And again, I was like, what the hell is this shit? They're like talking plant and
yeah.
And I was like, this is, I don't even know. But I was like, all right, listen guys, we're in New Zealand. You know what I mean? Like Lord of the Rings. You know,
Hmm.
I'm like, let's just take full advantage. Like, let's so my pitch was Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings. So I'm like, this
Mm.
is a group of kids that have, a master, a sensei who's going to teach them magic, you know, and but this is not like, I don't know what the fuck they did with that show. Like, they're wearing capes, but they're in the modern. I don't know. It's just, I was like, takes place. Maybe it's not even our world, but this is like
Yeah,
Middle Earth. This is like everything's ancient. Everything. Um,
it was all right. It was okay.
and it
I
was
didn't
just
mind
weird
it.
to me. It was
I
just
didn't.
weird to me. I just wanted to go big because I thought, SPD looked amazing. And I was like, and we would go to these locations like SWAT, the forest and the jungle.
Yes.
And I was like, let's do more of that. Like, let's not be in the city and a record store. Like, let's be medieval, you know? And, you know, uh, so I wrote my thing, and they were like, oh, this is crazy. And I was like, all right, I don't want to do this. And I moved on. But I did actually watch just recently, because I was thinking of maybe posting my script, and I was like,
Yeah.
what did the show end up being? And I watched like the first couple episodes. And again, I love the cast, but I was just like, ooh, it just looks it SPD is it's just its own little world,
It
It's like
was. It was a
like
hard one.
if you removed SPD and Dino Thunder went into Mystic Force, there would be like a flow.
Yeah.
It has that same vibe. The whatever, they had a pizza shop, and then there's the
Right.
record shop, and then SPD is like, it's just this weird anomaly. And yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I looking back now, 20 years, I'm like, oh, I see what I did there. You know what I
Well,
mean? I
just
see.
watching the show coming from SPD and then you get to Mystic Force, and then we're like, oh, this is different. But then I'm like, I do miss I do miss my SPD. Like there were some moments that I was like, damn. I wonder, like you just wonder all these, and there was some characters that kind of reminded you of. It was a couple characters that kind of reminded you of some in the SPD, and it was like, but it's like still not SPD though.
Yeah,
But
well,
it's still
Bruce,
good for what it
Jackie,
was.
everyone was still there, so the voices were still there. Um, but again, not talking they had source material, they had Disney pushing, like, so I was willing to fight because I was young and stupid, and maybe that's another reason why I'm not back on
I
the
mean,
show. And but they probably were like, because again, I didn't want my Rangers to even morph in the first episode, and they
yeah,
were just like, what, and I had to fight for that, and then I had to fight for them to not jump into a Zord right away, because I'm like, they're not licensed, they got to
yeah,
earn that, they got to get there. And Disney was like, oh, like, we got to sell the toy. I'm like, the toy will sell in the fourth
no
episode. It's not
problem.
like it
Yeah,
has to sell on the first day. It's like, I'm like, and we see them, the A team is in them, but it was weird, But uh, but yeah, again, I don't want to talk shit. I'm just trying to show the difference of my philosophy. It's like
oh
in the
yeah,
first episode of Mystic Force, it's like they're like, sure, we'll go help the old man, and then like 5 minutes later, there's like, here's your powers. Now
yeah,
you're a ranger, and I was like, no, that's not. Here's your magic wand. Now you're a ranger. I'm like, they should have had to learn magic and not just be like, I believe, and then they're Rangers. Like, they should have got their asses kicked for four
right,
episodes
right.
and
I get what
tried
you're
to
saying.
do things the same way that the other girl was turning into a sheep. You know,
Right,
they
you're
should have
right.
messed up during fights and turned each other into things.
I
And,
mean, towards
you
the
know,
end of the show, towards like I would say, it found its groove somewhere in the middle of the season for me, and then the story itself started to get better and better. Cause they had the conflict with family and stuff, and they had like it was like, who's the daddy, who's the mama type of thing. Like, oh, we got Maury going on, okay. So that became part of the show, and I'm like, okay, this is a little different now. They changed my mind a lot. But still, SPD is still the shit. Now, I just want to tell you, thank you so much. I don't want to take too much of your time now. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you so much, more than you ever know. This is once again a dream come true because this is what I always try to do for the show and for the audience and stuff that's just like me. is there any upcoming projects you got going on? Where can they find you to follow more of your journey? And because you have Vanguard effects and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and you just do so much great work. It's so cool, and then just to learn more about your backstory a little bit, and knowing like this man has been a part of my childhood way longer than I thought. Like this is it's crazy. Like it's so awesome. But yeah, let the audience
Yeah,
know.
like I said, SPD became the culmination of all those things, and that's
Yes.
yeah. So I mean, uh, in terms of things coming up, like we just had a bunch of stuff pass, like Beetlejuice 2, and then yesterday I had a commercial in the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Um, the Instacart commercial. I made the wiener dog, the hot dog costumes for all the herd of wiener dogs and stuff. If anybody saw that, so I'm always working on stuff. I am in the process of directing a movie. It's just a slow going thing because I'm trying to do it like scene by scene, like it's like SPD Beyond. Like it's like literally me building the set and making it's all animatronic puppets and stuff.
Nice.
Um, I keep setting goals for myself and then like not making the goals. So eventually that will come out. I'm also working on a series that is very like Power Rangers like that I may do a Kickstarter or something for it. We're gonna film the first episode in the summer and see what people think. So I'll be letting people know about that. But in terms of where to find me, like if you're a Power Rangers fan, you definitely want to be following me on Instagram right now because since this is the 20th anniversary and since it is 2025, the year the
Mm-hmm.
show takes place, I have made a commitment and a goal. So far, so good. Every day this year, I'm posting at least one behind the scenes photo or video or something that I've never showed anyone before every day for behind the scenes of SPD and telling little stories about how things happen. Actually, Alicia, I think, got mad at me because I posted a picture of her like dancing and she's like, you probably shouldn't have posted that. So it's like, it's like no holds bar. I'm just like showing you guys everything behind the scenes. The first day the Rangers put their spandex on,
That's awesome.
the making of Dougie Kruger, the building of the sets, the drawings I did, like, you know, all this crazy stuff. It's February. I don't know when you're going to air this, but right now it's
Yeah.
February. So I'm trying to give myself little goals this is achievable. So this month I'm doing like the love of SPD. So I'm showing like the cast and crew all getting along and everybody,
Oh,
because we
that's
really did. We
beautiful.
really were like a family. So, um, but yeah, it's definitely something to check out if you're a fan because every day you'll just get a little something that no one's ever seen before about SPD for the whole year.
And you heard it here first, guys. Please go check out this man's work. Go check out the everyday of SPD history on his page. It's some good behind the scenes stuff. I'll tell you right now, it's one of my things I like to read up on after every day. It's cool. It's like a daily digest for me. Just to look it up. It's on my feed all the time.
Yeah,
But
no, I'm loving it. It's
it's
just
great.
so fun to look at these old memories. I'm actually thinking about maybe at the end I might turn them all into like trading cards or something, and so everyone can just have this little pocket edition. And then the other thing I want to say to the fans is I'm also attempting to put together a schedule. Again, because it's the anniversary, it's a big deal for me. Like I love this show; it's one of my favorite things I've ever done, and one of the favorite parts. Now, it was amazing to do the show, but it's
Hmm.
even more amazing getting to meet all the fans. And
Right.
at Morphicon, I had so many people tell me like, "Oh, I'm a writer now because of this script that you
Oh,
wrote," or like, "I do
that's
visual
dope.
effects because of the work you did," and that's like amazing. So I want to meet more fans this year. I know a lot of people can't get to LA for Morphicon or the couple times I've
Yeah.
been to Ranger Stop, and so I'm trying to go all around the country. So if anyone knows of conventions that they're going to and they want me to show up, like send me some links where I can get a hold of people. And I want to come and bring props and scripts, and I got a bunch of exclusive merch that I've created
Oh,
just for this year. But I just want to meet people and hear their stories about SPD and
oh, that's awesome.
answer questions about SPD. I will not tell you who Sky's father is because I know people hate to hear it, but I don't know. They wouldn't let me make an original helmet, and they were just like, use this
Yeah.
one, and I didn't know. In hindsight, I wish because again, obviously we had the internet, but it was like super slow. Like in 2004,
Yeah.
Ranger board was like just starting. Like I didn't have like access at my fingertips to be like, what are all the seasons of Power Rangers and what is this helmet from and will anyone care? Like literally,
Yeah.
the Sean Tarkington was like, hey, like he thought he was doing me a favor, which he did because but he's like, hey, we got a bunch of old stuff. You want to just like retrofit it? And I was like, cool. I did not realize that 50,000 people a week would be like, Sky's
Yeah.
dad's got to be this guy from this season because and I'm like, no, it's
It's easy to know the behind the scenes stuff, but when you're at that time of like, wait, what's going on here? Like, but it took me like 2 years to realize that the A Squad helmets, and I don't know how I did not even pay attention, like realize A Squad helmets and Boom's helmet were both Power Rangers in Space.
yeah,
So like,
yeah.
it
Well, I
just,
mean, I tried to disguise them enough, like make them original enough, because I
yeah.
could afford to add some stuff. It was just too expensive to make all. Because the thing is, you don't just make a helmet. You need 5 of every helmet because there's the
Hmm.
helmet that the actor wears, and then there's the helmet that the stunt guy wears, and then there's the close-up helmet that's like almost seamless, and then there's the stunt helmets that pop open easy in case somebody gets hurt. So it's like, A Squad, we would have had to make, fucking 40 new helmets, which would have
Yeah.
been like $30,000. And they were like, no. They're like, you can have, this hero helmet and this stun helmet and glue shit on it. So I
Yeah.
tried to
Pretty
make them
much.
look cool. We repainted it, we added stuff. But the fans, they know, and it's like, but a lot of fans, and I get it, because it's like, when I watch somebody else's work, I'm like all in, and you forget, because we all say like, well, I would have done this, I would have done that, but it's like, when you're watching the show, you're in the world, but you always got to remember that world is being made by a bunch of people that don't have the budgets that we would like, and we try
Right.
to make it look like Marvel, but we don't. Marvel is spending 250 million for 2 hours,
Right.
and we're spending like 20 million for 38 times 22, what is it, like 10 something hours, you know what I mean? It's like, it does not,
I mean,
it's not the same,
sometimes when you have a if you once you sometimes even a smaller budget can bring out the best stuff anyway. So
yeah,
that's better than
especially
just
when
like
you
the
have
big expensive
heart and
stuff.
determination and the team is all there, George Port, the visual effects, it's like, you know again, we spoke the same language, so he was
Right.
excited. So, when production was like, there's no way you're doing an original Zord fight at the end, like Omni, he was like, we could do it. We could do it, So, because everyone was into it and it just really made the difference. Uh,
That's beautiful.
but yeah, so hopefully I'll see everybody at a convention somewhere.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Hopefully we get to see each other. Finally get to meet one of these one of these conventions. Hopefully soon. Uh, Definitely, I'm looking forward to that. And you know, it's just have a good time. Just have a good time. I just want to say thank you again
No
for
problem.
hopping
Thank
on
you. It was
there.
a pleasure. Next
It's
time we
just
do it, I'll have like a nice background and stuff.
oh man,
Literally.
it's fine. The the fact that we got to get some stories out of you with like your backstory was just amazing. You just that could be a movie in itself. Honestly, it could be a movie in
I mean,
itself.
in Hollywood, it's a common story. Lots of people
Yeah,
have done it, and that's the thing. If you're out there, if you want to make a show like Power Rangers or do something, it's like you just got to go for it. I didn't know everything. I barely knew anything when I came out, but I knew I wanted to do it, and like I said, I skew the curve because I did get lucky. I landed some jobs right away, but but like I said, it's still, even 20 something years later, when I was offered Power Rangers, I still had to fight to direct. I still had like, I call my career shoots and ladders because I
hmm
worked so hard to be, the best at this, the best model maker working for Spielberg. And then I'm like, but now I'm going to go direct. And I go, whoop. And then I'm at Corman, making $100,000 movie and being told I don't know what I'm doing. I got to work my way back up, and then I go to do the, whoop, you go back down. But you take everything you learn from those experiences and you make SPD.
awesome. And that's good advice for anybody who's listening or watching, digesting this information. Like that's just good. good information, good advice, I should say, to anybody who wants to do something, pursue something that's in the same field as well. Um,
Yeah, and I
and
want everyone to go for it because it's like I love making the shows to entertain you, but I need people to make shows to entertain me too. So,
yes,
come up with some creative stuff and go for it,
you guys heard it from the man himself. Thank you so much, Greg Aronowitz, everyone. And this is Dom. And once again, y'all know who I am. Uh, I like to say all the time, bear it all, be yourself. This is BearatNight Podcast. Greg Aronowitz here. We're out. See you guys next week.
Later. S.P.D. emergency.
S.P.D. emergency.